Kate Nilafalcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Welcome to new and returning viewers, subscribers, hopefully members. Hit all the buttons, do all the appropriate things to further this. Check out my membership here. Check out my Substack, Ask Your Irish Granny. If you need any advice, send me a letter, and check out my essays and videos over there that I don't put here. So this is one of a series of ongoing cases, tragedies, really. I hate to use the word cases. It's so devoid of emotion, that I've been exploring with Deborah Lupian. We debated doing this. This is just a warning. This is about the death of two teenage girls, 13 and 14 years old. And I am not going into any kind of detail. This is more about the investigation and trial. Kind of have to tell what happened somewhat to get to that point. This is a very 21st century crime because technology plays an enormous part in the story. So I don't want to be cryptic about it. This is the Delphi murders, and it's named after the little town in Indiana where these deaths tragically occurred. February 13th. 2017, Delphi, Indiana. Abigail Joyce Williams, 13, and Liberty Rose German, 6 months older, 14. Best friends for a very, very long time. And they lived in this small town of Delphi, just under 3,000 people. It was a day off school, like one of those snow day teacher things that you occasionally have. And it was unseasonably warm for February in Indiana. It was sweater weather, maybe light jacket weather. But it was a big contrast to how the weather had been, and people were out in droves, very happy to be outside in the sun. Liberty and Abigail, Libby and Abby, had been sleeping over at Libby's house. Now, Libby was under the guardianship of her grandparents, totally in touch with her mother and father, and Abby lived with her mother, slept over, had a little party, because it was no school day. And they kind of begged and wheedled and cajoled the grandmother, please can we go, please can we go? And she finally said, okay. So at 1:30 that afternoon, they got dropped off by Libby's older sister, Kelsey, who was driving to see her boyfriend, dropped her little sister off to do what? To hike, take a walk on this hiking trail called the Monon High Bridge Trail. So this is part of the Delphi Historic Trails, very popular hiking trails. And there were a number of different meandering trails that you could take. It was undeveloped land, some of it wooded, some of it underbrush, some of it clear, and there was a creek. And I believe this bridge was about 80 feet above the creek, a deer creek. The most puzzling thing about this is why anybody would want to walk on that bridge. It is so scary. So picture an old, unused railroad bridge. Nice meandering country stroll, crosses the bridge, and then continues on its way. Underneath it is this creek. You're 80 feet up in the sky. The bridge is made of trestles, and there are gaps. I mean, serious gaps between these wooden trestles, and there's nothing to hold on to. It was fairly wide, but Not wide enough for me. I would never, I'm just astounded that anybody would walk across this thing. But it was kind of the thing for the local kids to do, you know, it was a rite of passage almost. Libby had done it before because, of course, she has an older sister, and so she had done it before. Abby had never done it, and she was pretty nervous about it, but she really wanted to do it. So at 1:30, they get dropped off, and they had to walk to the bridge. At 2:07, Libby posted a Snapchat picture of Abby carefully walking across this bridge and watching her feet to make sure she was safe, slowly making her progress. And Libby had gotten ahead of her a bit. Periodically across this bridge, there were these little step out platforms where you could look at the view, take a picture. That's what Libby did. But this was their last communication with anybody. They didn't show up at, I believe it was 3:30, 3:15. Libby's father had arranged, I get off work. You guys can be there from 1:30 to 3:15. I get off work. I'll come and get you. Now, keep in mind that this was not a creepy, scary place. This was a very popular trail, popular with the kids, popular with joggers, dog walkers, exercisers. Not hugely busy. This is a very small town, and this particular trail is in the middle of nowhere. If you didn't live there, you wouldn't know it was there. You can't see it from a freeway. You can't find it with signs saying, come look at the bridge. It is just this construction in the middle of nowhere. So at 3:15, her dad pulls up to the drop-off point. Girls are not there. So he got out of the car and he walked the length to the bridge. Nobody. And I think there were one or two people heard him calling their names. So he called home. He rallied the family. They descended, you know, assorted aunts, grandparents, her sister, boyfriend, all those. They all showed up, friends. And they searched till about 5:30. And they couldn't find the girls. It was getting dark. It was cold. It was February. They called 911. It is remarkable, the response from the people of this little town. It looked like half the town was out there. People descended from all over, word of mouth, you know. The authorities searched with this huge public response. They didn't suspect foul play. What they thought is one of these girls fell down and got hurt, the other staying with her. We're just afraid of the exposure to the elements, because once night hits in February, you know, cold. So they searched late into the evening, and they had to call it off because the terrain was so dangerous, and it was wet because it was near the creek, and things were getting kind of a little bit slippery, you know, cold. So the police had to call it off, and the family, they were very upset about that. They continued to look throughout the night. At dawn, the formal search began again, and it went on until about noon, when the girls were found about a half a mile from the exit of the bridge on the north banks of Deer Creek. Of course, they had passed, and the police, within a very short time, day or two, they released a photograph, a still photograph of a guy, not real clear, but it gave them an idea. Shorter, they think middle-aged. It looked like he had facial hair here. He might have had a cap on. They weren't entirely sure. It was kind of not the clearest picture. He quickly became known in the vernacular as Bridge Guy. And he became the prime suspect. He became the prime suspect out of process of elimination. They went on media, the police did, and they said, if you were there at all that day, please call us, let us know. and people did respond. A week later, the police released a little bit of audio to go with this photograph of this guy. Just his voice saying down the hill. So where did this come from? Libby's phone had been found underneath Abby's body, buried in the leaves. And when they looked into it, they found a video of this bridge guy following them on the bridge and ordering them, once they got off at the other end, to go down this hill towards the embankment at the end of the bridge. Libby had the presence of mind to secretly film him. Abby had Libby's phone beneath her body. She had the presence of mind to hide it, bury it in the leaves. It was found later by forensic investigators. Remarkable courage on their part. So a reward was offered for any information. People came forward and said, yeah, I was there that day. There was a woman who exercised regularly on the bridge. There were 3 older girls with a younger sister of one of them who were kind of babysitting and out for a walk, school friends. The police came out with another sketch of a face that looked kind of different. It was created from eyewitness descriptions of sightings of bridge guy on the trail. In April, no, that was the original sketch. And it did look a little bit like the guy in the video. And then in April of 2019, they had another sketch, and this looked like a totally different person. It was really odd. They did a dramatic press conference when they released the second sketch, and the cops, I don't know, it's a very weird situation. The cops openly challenged the killer on this video. The guy who made the presentation was virtually in tears. They said that they believed that this killer was a local. The crime scene was in such an extremely remote area. It was really unlikely that somebody unknown to the area, out of towner, would have found it. So there were some clues to go on from eyewitnesses and also from CCTV footage. They saw a car parked in an isolated, abandoned, I think it was a child services office that had been abandoned off the highway. And people described that they'd seen it, and they looked through the CCTV cameras. They found that they could see it, but they couldn't identify it. But it gave them an idea, like, who did this car belong to? The investigation stalled. There were sidetracks. One sidetrack was really disturbing. How do I explain this? So Libby, when they got her phone, they went through her phone and they discovered that she'd been in communication with a young guy called Anthony Schatz, I think. He, very handsome, fancy car, fancy clothes, and he was chatting her up in a kind of concerning way. Come to find out, it was a catfishing scheme. This was like a Google picture of a model, a male model. It was not a real person in the sense that the model wasn't in touch with her. And they eventually managed to track down who it was. It was a local guy. And he and his father had a very, very disturbing lifestyle. He lived with his father. His name was Keegan Klein. Is that right? Keegan Klein. And their full-time occupation was catfishing young girls. I'm trying to think of how to say this. They found a whole ton of different devices in their house, and they were making and trading videos and pictures. I'll leave it at that. There was a lot of suspicion that went on Keegan Klein's head. Interviews with him are maddening to listen to because he talked in circles. He was a liar. Just a really disturbed personality. They eventually decided that he hadn't done anything to the girls, but he'd done plenty, and went to prison. Took a plea, went to prison. Meanwhile, the bridge guy suspect was finally identified. Now, this is, they had the FBI, the local police, the county police, the sheriff. They had the Indiana Bureau of Investigation. They had the wildlife officers. I mean, they had so many law enforcement agencies investigating, interviewing, looking at clues. It was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of jockeying for hierarchical power and authority. Campaigns were run for positions like sheriff or whatever. I found it to be a confusing mess, and I followed this crime at the beginning because I was just horrified by what kind of a person would do this. But I rapidly stopped paying attention. There are tons of information on the internet, and I stopped following it because the information got bogged down with a variety of different issues. The chaos within law enforcement, the chaos with internet, podcasts, YouTube people, the media. It was a mess. The whole Keegan Klein thing, gigantic red herring, like a red whale, basically. So at some point, around 2021, 22, an older woman who was a volunteer in that small community, she knew everybody, and she volunteered, look, I have nothing to do. Why don't I come in and help you get your filing cabinets in order? Because this is a mess. So she's a very organized person, very logical person, and she started to address this paperwork nightmare that they had on their hands. And one day, going through a file, she found an interview with a guy who had called up and said, hey, I was on the bridge, but I didn't see the girls. But my wife is making me call because I was on the bridge. And they sent a wildlife officer, was the only available guy. And he went out and talked to this guy at his house and didn't really make anything of it, wrote a report and filed it. And it got filed under the name of the guy's street and not under the guy's name. So when they went back to interview people, they couldn't find the guy with the street name, and it just sort of sat there. She was a local. She looked at this and went, wait a minute, that's not his name. That's the street he lives on, and contacted people, and they realized, well, there was nobody else out there. This handful of people and bridge guy. The handful of witnesses saw bridge guy. This guy claims he saw these witnesses. Ergo, he must be bridge guy. So he became prime suspect. So they called him in. And this guy is a pharmacy tech at CVS, kind of the head of the pharmaceutical whatever. And his name is Richard Ricky Allen. And he was called in to, we just want to clarify, we're brushing up, that kind of thing. So Kathy Shank, shout out to Kathy Shank, is the volunteer who discovered the misorganization. So they had him come in on the basis of other witnesses who claimed they saw him and the fact that he would have been on the phone of the victims. They got a search warrant. They went to his house. They found clothes identical to the clothes the guy was wearing on the bridge. They found bullets that came from the same type of bullet as a single round that was found between the two girls' bodies, an unusual type of bullet. And when they did ballistics, it matched his gun. So he was held, charged, trial was set, and then the judge issued a gag order. And that's where it sat. Dissension in the ranks because the defense lawyers, it's a crazy story, and I would recommend you read the book. It doesn't, my copy of the book, I took the cover off to keep it nice. It's called Shadow of the Bridge by Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee. Shadow of the Bridge. They're coming to talk. They've been on here before. They have a podcast called The Murder Sheet, and I can hardly wait to talk to them. But it's a great book. It's really interesting. They did a masterful job because this case was such a mess. So what do we know about Richard Allen? Very little. I just find this very frustrating. I can't wait to look at him with Deborah. He was born in 1972 in Mexico, Indiana. Indiana has some of the craziest names. There's Delphi and Mexico and Peru. Anyway, he went to junior college. I don't think he finished. He went to the Army, then he went to the National Guard. He quit both. He has a long record of quitting things, getting a job, being put in a position of some small managerial thing, and then quitting or being fired. He was married and had one daughter. He worked as a retail manager in several stores. For a while, I think he worked for Walmart. He had a hard time keeping a job. At the time of the crime, he was the pharmacy tech at CVS in Delphi. His story was the day of the crime, it was his day off from work. And at 11:15, he left his mother's house. She lived in town. He'd been visiting. At 12:15, an hour later, he arrived at the trail. He did see the three girls. He counted wrong. He saw the girls who were babysitting the younger girl. They claim they saw a bridge guy, and that's the only guy they saw. He said he saw three girls with a little girl. He was too busy looking at his phone to notice anything. He said he saw nothing. He went home, and the whole crime hit the news, and his wife was horrified. And he said, well, I was out on the trail that day. And she said, well, you have to call in. So she made him call in. And he eventually admitted more than 60 times on phone calls, speaking to the prison psychologist, in writing, in interrogations. He admitted 60 times that he did it. His mother and wife wouldn't let him talk about it. They didn't want to hear, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. They're putting something in your food. They're giving you the wrong meds. There's something wrong with you. No, you didn't do it. The clinical psychologist for the prison said that he had a grave disability. And he told her that his intent when he went out there was non-consensual interaction with any random that he could find. But he panicked. He took them down to where he took them. And in the process of what he had planned, a van drove by. And the van drove by. They could catch a glimpse of it through the trees. The people in the van didn't see him. They didn't realize they were on private property. Huge acreage, but uninhabited in that area. But there was a dirt road that led up to the residence of the people who owned the property. They just drove by, but it spooked him. So he did what he did. He was convicted on November 11th of 2024 and sentenced on December 20th of 2024. He was sentenced to 130 years. He's now in Pendleton Correction Facility in Indiana. In April of this year, they started to release some of the recordings of the interrogations. You can hear them on YouTube. You can hear them on the Murder Sheet podcast. But the best place to go for the whole entire thing is a website, a channel on YouTube called Tom Webster. I tried to get him to come on my channel when this thing first broke. Basically, he kept exhaustive, detailed spreadsheets of everything. But he also has some funny stuff on his channel. And I never heard back. I might try again. We'll see. He did just a powerful job of collating and collecting information. He kept the public interest up, and he did it in a non-exploitative way. So there's Tom Webster on YouTube, and there's the Murder Sheet podcast. And stay tuned, because Anya and Kevin will be here. Every time I say this, something happens at the last minute, but I hope, they'll be here this week, and I'll be meeting with Deborah, and we'll do our little thing, and maybe we'll get some insight, because I have so many questions. That's the story, the very sad story of Liberty and Abigail, two just lovely people, large hearts, kind spirits, so much potential lost. It's just a tragedy, and my heart goes out to their families. I can't imagine. As a mother of daughters, nobody can imagine, but you kind of personalize it. It just, it's horrible. And on that happy note, thank you very much for watching. I just appreciate your support. Song of Oil. Slange.